The elderly father-in-law, who was supposedly blind and in need of care, was neglected while my husband and his mother enjoyed themselves outside. They often left me to attend to him, while they pursued their own interests. One day, the supposedly blind father-in-law suddenly stood up. I wondered how to confront my husband and his mother about their behavior. My name is Annie. I'm 33 years old, and I want to share a real experience from my life. I grew up as the only girl among 3 siblings, adored by my dad despite his objections. I moved from the West Coast to the East Coast after marrying my current husband. As my dad tearfully bid us goodbye, and my mom chuckled, Dad disapproved of the marriage due to living with the in-laws and the responsibility of caring for my father-in-law. Mom always urged me to follow my heart, but Dad never held my mother-in-law or husband in high regard. Despite initial kindness from my husband, things have changed drastically. The power dynamics in the house now favor my mother-in-law and husband over my father-in-law. He was diagnosed as blind a few years ago and mostly stays at home. Initially, there were several caregivers, but after I married into the family, my mother-in-law and husband dismissed them all without consultation, claiming it was too expensive. My father-in-law wished to keep at least one familiar male caregiver, but my husband reluctantly agreed, assisted by the same caregiver who had been with the family even before his blindness. I am responsible for mornings, evenings, and a full day each week when the caregiver is absent. Despite working remotely full-time for a company, my husband and his mother have begun treating me as a substitute caregiver. When I voiced my concerns, they retorted, questioning why they allowed someone with my caregiving background to marry into the family, expecting me to manage their baggage. Ironically, they referred to my father-in-law as baggage despite his wealth covering most expenses. My mother-in-law's treatment of him is appalling, and my husband once remarked callously that if only his father passed away sooner, they would inherit sooner. Despite wanting to divorce my husband, I couldn't bear the thought of my father-in-law being mistreated while I was away. I often felt sorry for him, especially on their days off when my mother-in-law and husband would leave me to care for him while they enjoyed themselves, indulging in careless shopping. Originally, my father-in-law was a significant landowner with several properties that generated a steady passive income managed by professionals. I only handled the payments, but my mother-in-law and husband would siphon off money from the bank account for their own use. When I confronted my father-in-law about this misuse, he sadly admitted, I see that my wife and son only view me as a cash cow. I apologize for burdening you with my care. I reassured him, don't apologize. Using my caregiver's license is what I'm here for. My work is home-based, so helping you isn't a problem. Taking care of my father-in-law wasn't burdensome, but my frustration grew towards my mother-in-law and husband who neither did housework nor held jobs, yet acted superior. My resentment towards this do-nothing duo intensified. Then one day my mother-in-law and husband announced they were going to the Caribbean for 2 to 3 weeks. Don't do anything unnecessary. Just focus on your caregiving, they instructed casually. They packed their bags happily and excitedly a week in advance. Once they left, I finally had a moment to relax. To my surprise, father-in-law started changing into a suit on his own. I was taken aback and stared in shock. Come on, dear, let's go, father-in-law said, standing before me in his suit. It was clear from his eyes that he wasn't blind. Father-in-law, can you see? I asked, surprised. Not perfectly blind. Blindness can't be cured completely, he replied, handing me a business card indicating where he wanted to go. 3 weeks later, an oblivious husband and mother-in-law returned, relaxed from their trip. Fun times always end too soon. We're back to reality, my husband remarked with a sigh. In the blink of an eye, do we have to face this gloomy face again? Next time, let's go to the Maldives, my mother-in-law added. Within 10 minutes of their return, the doorbell rang. I answered through the monitor and found 2 men in suits standing there. I recognized one of them, I said as mother-in-law, and my husband looked puzzled. Oh, it's James's lawyer. What brings you here? As the two wondered, father-in-law walked into the living room. He guided the lawyers to chairs and sat down himself. Did he just walk and sit down by himself? Mother-in-law muttered. The lawyers sat down reluctantly, looking at father-in-law quietly. He called me over, and I took a seat next to him. Today, I've set up this meeting for 3 reasons, father-in-law began. The first one is about your husband's affair. Saying this, he pulled out a photograph from an envelope. In it, my husband, mother-in-law, and an unfamiliar woman were captured intimately. Who's this woman? Father-in-law asked calmly. Neither my husband nor mother-in-law said a word in response. Father-in-law continued to reveal more photos from the envelope, several showing my husband with his arm around the woman, clearly enjoying her company, and others of them entering the hotel at different times and places. I've known about your husband's infidelity since he married you, father-in-law stated. He didn't just go to the Caribbean with the two of you. He was with her too. With all the evidence laid out, there was no denying it. Why? How did you? My husband stammered, clearly caught off guard. It seems my husband believed he had gotten away with it. I whispered to myself, realizing the extent of the betrayal. Amid the whirlwind of work, household chores, and caregiving, I hadn't noticed the signs. I simply assumed my husband and his mom were enjoying outings together. Don't you have anything to say to her? I finally confronted my husband, breaking the tension that had hung in the air. Awkwardly glancing at me, he sighed. Well, if we've been found out, so be it. Yes, you're just a caregiver to him now. He has a new partner, a so-called common-law wife. My mother-in-law chimed in, laughing. Is this true? Even when directly confronted, my husband could only mumble in response. He made no attempt to explain. We've rented a place for just the two of them. While they enjoy their time, I'm left alone in a hotel. Do you think she makes a better wife for my son than you, who can't even spend time with him? My mother-in-law continued, adding that this had been going on for over a year. If you wanted to do such a thing, you should have divorced me, I said, my voice trembling with emotion. Oh, I did consider letting him divorce you, my mother-in-law replied casually. But she doesn't want to take care of James, so what can we do? In another couple of years, we can just put James in a facility. That's what I thought. Her words hit me like a tidal wave. Shock and disbelief washed over me. Well, that's how it is, she concluded. I'm fine with you divorcing right now, but since you'd be abandoning caregiving, don't expect any compensation in the divorce settlement. My sorrow quickly turned to anger. Enough is enough. You can't just play with her life like it's a game. Father-in-law, suddenly filled with energy, jumped up and yelled at the two of them. My husband and mother-in-law were taken aback. But you've been hiding something too, father-in-law continued, his voice sharp. You can actually see, can't you? Otherwise, how could you walk around your room and sit down by yourself? Mother-in-law quickly retorted, That's right, you lied to us. Desperately trying to deflect, my husband said, It's not a lie. I did go blind, but it's partial blindness. I'm not completely blind. I've been undergoing treatments, and right now, I'm at an intermediate stage. Why then did you pretend you can't see? Father-in-law pressed. Why let everyone assume that on their own? The room fell silent, tension thick in the air as everyone waited for an answer. When I woke up one morning with bad eyesight, I went to the hospital with a caregiver and returned in a wheelchair. It was then that I saw all of you jumping to conclusions, making funny faces in front of me, thinking I couldn't see you. If you knew we misunderstood, why didn't you tell us? That's not fair, I said firmly. The caregiver tried to intervene, but I stopped her. I wanted to see how things played out. After all, it seemed like both of you were pleased about my blindness. At those words, both my husband and mother-in-law looked away. It hadn't even been a month since my father-in-law's blindness when I married my husband. All I had heard from him was, My father is blind. I too had assumed he was completely blind. Another thing. Regarding divorce, father-in-law continued calmly, What daughter-in-law and my son decide to do is up to daughter-in-law. If needed, I can introduce you to a lawyer. But the divorce I'm talking about isn't between the two of them. It's between you and me. Father-in-law stared straight at mother-in-law as he spoke. Divorce? Who does that? If that's the case, let's talk about the last point. I want my money back, father-in-law declared abruptly. It turned out he had been giving mother-in-law a living allowance every month. However, thinking that the blind father-in-law wouldn't notice, mother-in-law had dipped into other savings. Worst of all, it was from the inheritance left by father-in-law's father. You always had a tendency to lavish yourself with money. That's why I arranged for a set amount to be transferred to you through the home caregiver, father-in-law explained calmly. But knowing you, I thought you might spend from other sources when you learned about my blindness. That's why I kept separate accounts for my earnings and the inheritance. A year later, when father-in-law checked with the bank, he discovered that around $60,000 had been spent in just that year alone. $60,000, father-in-law exclaimed, astonished. It's unbelievable that mother-in-law could waste so much money every month. If I had that kind of money in a year, I wouldn't even know what to buy. But for mother-in-law, with her spending habits, it seems like pocket change. I can't possibly pay that back, mother-in-law retorted defiantly. Plus, it's my money too, right? Whether it's inheritance or whatever, I can use it as I please. You don't understand inheritance law, father-in-law responded firmly. Even if we divorce, that inheritance won't go to you. If you can repay that money all at once, I'll let you stay and not proceed with a divorce. But if you can't, consider that $60,000 as property division and quietly agree to a divorce. The real estate owned by father-in-law and mother-in-law had also originally come from his father's inheritance. Therefore, mother-in-law couldn't claim it in a property division. But Dad, I began, realizing now how wrong. I've been wrong all this time. I want to change. Can you please forgive me for everything? The husband desperately clung to his father's feet. Daughter-in-law, what will you do? Do you still want to be with this lazy cheater? Father-in-law asked, looking at me. No, I've come to see the light. I realize now how foolish it was to tolerate him just because I loved him, I replied firmly. Can you recommend a lawyer? I'll be seeking compensation in the divorce proceedings and will be divorcing him. I had lost all feelings for my husband and decided to demand compensation in the divorce proceedings. Simultaneously, a meticulous lawyer handed me a divorce application, which I signed on the spot. Wait a second, I don't have the money to pay any compensation, my husband protested. You can start a part-time job or find another way to pay it back, father-in-law suggested. I'll let you stay in this house for a while because of our son, not because you're my son, but to keep an eye on you. My husband, tears in his eyes, apologized to me and signed both the divorce application and the compensation agreement. Father-in-law then surprised me further. I also want to give you a portion of my assets as a token of my gratitude and apology. I'd rather give it to you than to my son, father-in-law declared solemnly. He handed me a copy of his will. What is this? I asked, bewildered. The original is with the lawyer. I can't give it to you now, father-in-law explained. When I pass away, the lawyer will contact you. At that time, I want you to accept my assets. The will stated that a portion of father-in-law's property and bank deposits would be inherited by me. I can't accept this, I said, feeling overwhelmed. I've only been with your family for just over a year. I haven't done anything special to deserve this from father-in-law, I protested. No, that's not true. You stood by my side and tried to protect me, even when they said such terrible things, father-in-law replied with a gentle smile. Why are you giving it to that young woman? I've been with you for many more years, mother-in-law interjected angrily. Quiet, what have you done for me? Father-in-law countered firmly. From the moment we got married, you left all the household chores to the help. Weren't you the same with raising our son? It was me and the maids who looked after him when he was young. I know about your affairs and that you spent money on your lovers. It's shameful what you and our son have done. Even my husband looked surprised at father-in-law's words. Wait, Mom said it was Dad who had the affair and that she raised me all by herself. What's going on? I asked, noticing mother-in-law's nervous demeanor and her evasive gaze. Do you believe James over me? Mother-in-law shot back, but it was clear to everyone that she was lying. My husband was taken aback, but the truth was now out between father-in-law and mother-in-law. The revelation of my husband's affair left no sympathy for him, considering mother-in-law's own infidelity. As the conversation neared its end, mother-in-law was forced to sign the divorce papers and pack her bags. She left the house without any resistance and father-in-law and mother-in-law officially divorced that day. Regarding the compensation for my husband's divorce proceedings, father-in-law paid it off in a lump sum, believing it would be better for me. My husband agreed to repay father-in-law. I packed my things to return to my parents' home, arranging for them to be shipped from our large house, courtesy of father-in-law. My husband lived on the second floor, confined to certain areas to avoid crossing paths with me. For a whole month, I managed to keep my distance from them. Everything was settled on moving day when the intercom rang. To my surprise, my parents' faces appeared on the screen. Hurrying to the front door, I found my father already in tears and my mother smiling brightly. It turned out father-in-law had generously covered the travel expenses and arranged everything. Although I had only informed my parents about my divorce, they already knew about the challenging year I had faced. Apparently, father had received a call from father-in-law about 6 months after my wedding. Father-in-law had been honest about the situation, saying, "I'll take responsibility and straighten him out. I'd like you to wait a little longer before coming to get her." After hearing everything from mother-in-law to my husband to father-in-law, father understood that simply telling me to come back wouldn't be enough to convince me. It's hard for anyone to accept infidelity claims about someone they love, especially without evidence or valid reasons. So, he chose to trust father-in-law's judgment. 2 years have passed since then, and it seems my husband has been gradually repaying father-in-law. Fortunately, my job, which has always been fully remote, allowed me to live anywhere. I still occasionally keep in touch with father-in-law, and my work is going well. Although I once worried I might grow disillusioned with love, that's not the case. I found happiness again with a new boyfriend and am enjoying a relaxed and contented life with my family.